I am Leo, 31, male, and I stayed silent when they betrayed me, but my success became the loudest revenge. It's a truth I carry with a quiet pride now, a testament to a betrayal so profound it shattered my entire world. For years, I was the visionary architect, working tirelessly under the tutelage of David, a man I respected and admired like a father. Beside me was Chloe, my best friend and brilliant colleague, the one I shared my wildest dreams with. We were a trio, a powerhouse of creativity and ambition, or so I naively believed. We were on the cusp of landing a career-defining project, a groundbreaking residential complex that was my singular creative vision. David, my mentor, had promised me a full partnership and a significant stake, a promise that, in hindsight, was a carefully crafted lie. The first hint of this deception came during a seemingly innocuous meeting. David, who was usually meticulous about paperwork, had me sign a series of new company agreements, a broad non-disclosure agreement among them. Just standard procedure for a project of this scale, Leo, he said with a charming, paternal smile. To protect our intellectual property, I, trusting him completely, signed without reading the fine print, a foolish act born from loyalty, not naivety. Then there was the subtle shift in Chloe. She had always been my sounding board, my closest confidante. We would spend hours sketching out ideas, a creative partnership that felt effortless. But as my groundbreaking project took shape, her support became less about collaboration and more about extraction. She started asking more detailed questions about my core design principles, my unique technical approaches, and the intricate personal vision behind the project. She'd always end with a smile, saying, "Just trying to understand it from every angle, bestie." I dismissed my fleeting unease, attributing it to her natural curiosity. The most painful foreshadowing came during a late-night work session. I was exhausted, stressed, and on the verge of a breakthrough. I confided in Chloe, telling her about a crucial new feature I had just developed, the one I knew would make the entire project a masterpiece. She listened, her eyes wide with what I thought was admiration. "Leo," she said softly, "that's brilliant. It's going to be your masterpiece." She then hugged me tightly, a gesture of support that now feels like a viper's embrace. Unbeknownst to me, she had already been having a secret affair with David, and they were actively plotting to steal my masterpiece, to present it as their own, leaving me, the true visionary, with nothing but the dust of their betrayal. The weeks that followed were a torturous, yet strangely blissful, prelude to my downfall. I was in a feverish state of creativity, polishing the final details of my architectural masterpiece, a project I had poured my heart and soul into for over a year. I believed the grand presentation was just a formality, a public unveiling of the hard work David, Chloe, and I had put into the project. David continued his paternal mentorship, praising my work, talking about the future of our partnership, all while orchestrating my complete and utter ruin. Chloe, meanwhile, was my constant, a supportive presence who offered encouragement and quiet praise, all while secretly providing David with my most intimate, creative secrets. I noticed subtle shifts in their behavior, but my mind, blinded by trust, refused to connect the dots. David and Chloe started having more private meetings, often in David's office with the door closed, something that had never happened before. They'd emerge with tight smiles, claiming they were just discussing logistical details. For the project, which I was too busy with the creative aspects to question, they were also growing closer in a way that felt uncomfortable, an intimacy that went beyond a professional partnership. I dismissed my uneasiness as pre-presentation jitters. My biggest mistake, however, was my blind faith in David's promise of a full partnership. I had signed a few more documents, vague agreements that David insisted were necessary for securing our claim to the intellectual property. He told me he was handling all the legal stuff, a detail I was only too happy to delegate, trusting my mentor completely. He had my full trust, my signed agreements, and my detailed, creative vision. I had given him every key to the kingdom, never imagining he would use them to lock me out. The morning of the grand presentation, I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. I arrived at the firm's headquarters early, ready for the final rehearsal. David and Chloe were already there, impeccably dressed, their faces radiating a strange mixture of tension and triumph. "Leo," David boomed, a wide smile on his face, "my boy. You ready for your big day? His words, which I once would have taken as a sign of pride, now feel like a cruel mockery. He then pulled me aside, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Leo, before the presentation, there's a final document we need you to sign. Just a formality, a small amendment to the partnership agreement. He handed me a single page. I barely glanced at it, my mind racing with final details of my presentation. I signed it, a quick, almost careless gesture, and handed it back to him. It was the final nail in my coffin, a document I now realize was a revised, legally binding non-dis closure agreement that stripped me of all my claims, my creative rights, and my voice. The stage was set, the audience was waiting, and I was completely oblivious to the fact that I was about to be publicly and irrevocably betrayed. The auditorium was a sea of faces, a mix of investors, industry peers, and clients. I stood backstage, my heart thrumming with nervous energy, ready to present the architectural masterpiece I had poured my soul into. David and Chloe were beside me, their confident smiles a stark contrast to my anxious excitement. You're going to be great, Leo, Chloe whispered, giving my arm a squeeze. Her touch, which I once would have taken as a sign of support, now feels like a phantom ache. The moment came, David walked onto the stage, a charismatic figure bathed in the spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice booming with practiced ease. It is my great honor to present to you the future of urban residential design. He then proceeded to introduce the project, a visually stunning presentation filled with sleek renderings and innovative concepts. I watched from the wings, a swell of pride in my chest, a quiet triumph for years of hard work, but as the presentation neared its end, something felt wrong. David wasn't introducing me. He wasn't inviting me on stage to share the credit. Instead, he simply gestured to Chloe, who walked out, radiant and confident, to stand beside him. The slide behind them now displayed their names, David and Chloe, as the sole architects and visionaries behind the project. My name was nowhere to be found. A cold dread washed over me, a sickening realization that turned my blood to ice. He hadn't just forgotten me, he had erased me. I stumbled out of the wings, my voice a raw, choked sound. David, what are you doing? The audience turned, a wave of confusion rippling through the crowd. David, unfazed, turned to me with a look of feigned concern. Leo, what's wrong? You're not supposed to be out here. Chloe, beside him, just offered a tight, dismissive smile. That's my project, I yelled, my voice shaking with a mix of fury and disbelief. That's my work. David shook his head, his face now a mask of pitying condescension. Leo, my boy, I think you've had a difficult week. This project was a collaborative effort, and as per the agreements you signed, all intellectual property belongs to the firm. He then gestured to the security guards, who had been discreetly placed at the side of the stage. I'm afraid Leo won't be joining us. He's not feeling well. The guards took my arm, their grip firm, as the audience, now a mix of shocked faces and whispering critics, watched my public humiliation unfold. Chloe avoided my gaze, her face set in a look of triumphant resolve. As I was escorted out, a ghost in my own victory, I heard a final mocking sound, Chloe's confident voice beginning to explain the design as if it were her own. They had not only stolen my project, they had stolen my identity, my voice, and my future. They had left me with nothing but the echo of my name and the scars of a public betrayal. I stayed silent when they betrayed me, but that silence would be a temporary thing, a quiet pause before the roaring of my revenge. The public humiliation was a wound that festered, leaving behind a deep psychological scar. The cold, sterile hallways of the convention center as I was escorted out felt like a prison. My project, my masterpiece, was on display, celebrated by the very people who had betrayed me. I heard the applause, the murmurs of appreciation for David and Chloe's vision, a symphony of mockery that drove the knife deeper into my heart. I was left with nothing, no job, no project, no future. The non-disclosure agreement I had foolishly signed, which I now realized was a legal maneuver to silence me, meant I couldn't even speak of my betrayal. My former colleagues and friends, most of whom had witnessed my public downfall, avoided my calls. David and Chloe had not only stolen my work, but they had also stolen my credibility, painting me as an unstable, emotional artist whose work had to be taken away for his own good. The quiet that descended on my life was deafening, but in that silence, a cold, hard resolve began to take shape. I refused to let their narrative win. I refused to let my talent die in the shadow of their theft. The pain was immense, but instead of allowing it to consume me, I channeled it into a singular, unwavering purpose: revenge. Not a messy, public fight that would only confirm their lies about me, but a silent, methodical, and ultimately loud form of retribution. My silence would be a temporary thing, a quiet pause before the roar of my success. I started from scratch with a meager savings account and a battered old portfolio. I converted my small apartment into my new architectural studio, turning my living room into a drafting table, my bedroom into a quiet space for creative contemplation. The betrayal that had left me emotionally and financially ruined also became the relentless engine of my creative fire. I worked tirelessly, fueled by the image of David and Chloe on that stage, their triumphant smiles a constant mocking memory. I knew their weaknesses. David, the old mentor, had lost his touch. He was a master of manipulation, but his creative vision had been stagnant for years. Chloe, the talented colleague, was a brilliant technician, but she lacked the singular, creative soul, the spark that had made my project a masterpiece. Without my vision, their stolen project would be a hollow imitation, a beautiful facade with no substance. This was the key to my revenge. Their project would inevitably fail, and mine, born from the ashes of their betrayal, would soar. I would not just reclaim my work, I would surpass it, and in my success, I would make them remember my name forever. In the quiet, methodical weeks that followed my betrayal, my apartment became my sanctuary and my battleground. While David and Chloe, buoyed by the stolen project, enjoyed the limelight, I worked in complete silence, a phantom in the architectural world. I poured my creative energy not into fighting them, but into building something entirely new. The non-disclosure agreement they had used to silence me also served a different purpose. It forced me to be a ghost, a silent, unacknowledged force, which was the perfect camouflage for my plan. I began designing my new masterpiece, a residential complex that was even more innovative and groundbreaking than the one they had stolen. I used the intimate knowledge I had gained from my past work, from the stolen project, to learn from its flaws and build an even more perfect design. I focused on sustainability, on community, on architectural principles that were ahead of their time. The project, which I named The Ascendant, was a physical manifestation of my own journey, a testament to my resilience and my silent, unshakable resolve. I also began to secretly build a new network. I reached out to an old university friend, now a successful real estate developer, and pitched him my new idea. He, having heard the whispers of my public downfall, was initially hesitant. But when he saw my new designs, my raw, undeniable talent, his skepticism melted away. He was not just a client, he became my champion, a man who saw my vision, not my public humiliation. He connected me with a group of private investors, a group that valued talent and creative vision over corporate politics. Meanwhile, David and Chloe's stolen project was floundering. Their lack of my creative soul, my unique vision, had turned the project into a commercial and critical failure. They had the plans, but they couldn't capture the spirit, the fire, the heart of the design. The reviews were lukewarm, the investors were getting cold feet, and the project, which was supposed to be their triumph, was slowly becoming a public embarrassment. The moment for my revenge was fast approaching. The Ascendant was a few weeks away from its public unveiling, a high-profile event that my new investors were hosting. It was to be a celebration of a new architectural vision, a new studio, a new, successful architect. I knew David and Chloe would be there, a crucial part of their rival project's world. They would see me not as the broken associate they had cast aside, but as a rival, a professional, a success. The silence I had maintained, the years of silent work, were about to end with the loudest roar imaginable. The storm was coming, and David and Chloe, in their quiet embarrassment, had no idea they were about to be caught right in the middle of it. The grand unveiling of The Ascendant was a stark contrast to the betrayal that had sparked its creation. It was a high-profile event, a beautiful presentation of a project that was truly groundbreaking. I stood on stage, not as an associate, but as the founder and lead architect of my own firm. The auditorium was filled with a new network of clients, investors, and industry peers who celebrated my vision, my passion, and my talent. David and Chloe were there, two uninvited guests in my victory. They had arrived with a few of their remaining clients, trying to save face, trying to pretend that my triumph was a minor annoyance. I saw them in the back, their faces a mix of strained politeness and bitter shock. They had not seen my name on the guest list, had not heard of my new firm. They had expected me to be a broken, forgotten architect, not a successful rival. As I concluded my presentation to a thunderous applause, I made my final, silent act of revenge. I looked out into the crowd, my gaze sweeping over the many new, supportive faces. Then I let my eyes land on David and Chloe. I didn't say their names, I didn't address them. I simply met their gaze, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across my face, a mirror of the triumphant smile Chloe had given me as I was escorted out of the auditorium years ago. This time, however, my smile was real, my triumph undeniable. The silence I had maintained, the years of silent work, the meticulous building of my new firm, it all culminated in that single moment. They understood. They saw me not as the broken artist they had betrayed, but as the successful rival who had not only reclaimed his worth, but had surpassed them in every conceivable way. Their stolen project, their moment of supposed glory, had become a public failure, a source of quiet embarrassment. My success born from their betrayal was the living, breathing, and loudest revenge imaginable. They had stayed silent after my public humiliation, allowing my reputation to die in the shadows. I, in turn, stayed silent in their presence, allowing my success to speak for itself. My new network, a group of people who valued integrity and vision, understood the unspoken story, the quiet power of my presence. They saw a man who had been betrayed and had not fought back with anger and spite, but with hard work, talent, and a relentless resolve to build something better. David and Chloe were forced to leave early, their grand illusion of success shattered by the stark reality of my triumph. They were left with nothing but the quiet, bitter consequences of their betrayal, their professional and personal lives forever tainted by the shadow of my success. I had stayed silent when they betrayed me, but my success, my masterpiece, was the loudest revenge of all. The aftermath of the ascendant's unveiling was swift and decisive. The story of my success, juxtaposed with the quiet failure of David and Chloe's stolen project, became a powerful narrative in the architectural community. The whispers of my initial betrayal, once dismissed as the ramblings of a bitter ex-employee, now took on a new weight, backed by the undeniable proof of my talent and success. David and Chloe's firm, already struggling with the failure of their project, dissolved. They were left professionally and personally ruined, their reputations irrevocably tarnished. They had taken everything from me, only to lose everything themselves, their moment of triumph forever overshadowed by the shadow of my success. For me, the journey from betrayal to triumph was a profound and transformative one. The quiet, relentless work I had put into my new firm and my new project was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my identity, my worth, and my voice. The silent fury that had fueled me had gradually given way to a deep, abiding peace. I had discovered a strength within myself I never knew I possessed, a resilience that was forged in the fire of their betrayal. My own firm flourished, building a reputation for innovation, integrity, and a deep passion for creating designs that were not just beautiful but meaningful. I was surrounded by a new team, a group of people who were driven by a genuine love for architecture, not by greed or ambition. My old network, the one that had abandoned me in my darkest hour, now clamored to be a part of my success, but I had moved on. My new world was built on a foundation of trust, not on a quicksand of lies. I learned invaluable lessons from the ordeal. I learned to trust my instincts, to value integrity above all else, and to understand that true talent cannot be stolen. David and Chloe had taken my project, but they could never take my creative vision, my fire, my soul. They had left me with nothing, but in their cruelty they had given me the greatest gift of all, the freedom to build my own legacy, my own future on my own terms. My success, born from the ashes of their betrayal, became my masterpiece, a living, breathing testament to the quiet power of resilience and the undeniable triumph of a vision uncompromised. After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories. We are all human. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon.